when you bring back and you talk about Taoism and what have you. I mean, Lao Tzu, you know, Dao Ke Dao, Wu Shi Dao, Ming Ke Ming, Wu Shi Ming, you know, that which is the Dao is not the Dao, that which is the name is not the name. You know, you start a conversation like that, wow, you got them going, you got them excited. So this is showing interest in their culture. Yes?
I have a quick question. Let's say you're past the college level and you're interested in learning Chinese. About how long does the process take and where do you go for that?
Chinese is like a tunnel because it's like multiplexing. It's more than just vocabulary. And there's this tonal system. And so there's this long tunnel that you have to go through to hear the tones and to speak the tones. And for me, which was intensive, every day, 5 days a week, going for 2 hours of lessons a day, it took me 7 to 8 weeks before I finally started hearing things on the street. Okay, but that doesn't get you very far. Remember, Chinese is a language that is not 200, 300, 400, 500 years old. You know, it's thousands upon thousands of years old. So just as you get into it, it's going to take you a minimum of 2 years to have a good competency if you were studying over there intensely. If you wanted to get to a level of a professor and speak that level of Chinese, it would take you 5 years. But I wouldn't be discouraged by any of that. And what's really neat is there's so many people who start Chinese and then they stop. It's too overwhelming for them. And so I meet so many people over in Asia who study for 2 months, so I give up. So the essence of learning Chinese is discipline and continuance. And then you will learn it. Yes?
Kind of a follow-up on his, do you think you could have been as successful in China if you hadn't known Chinese? And how much is kind of lost in translation when you're trying to convey a conversation with somebody?
I think that you've become much closer very quickly when you can speak Chinese. So, you know, the Westerners typically see the Chinese as being a very stoic race. And they look at them, they seem to have stoic faces and expressions. But I tell you, you speak 2 sentences of Chinese to a Chinese and all of a sudden they look like a glowing sun. And so just speaking the language opens them up. It's like opening the door. And I wouldn't pretend to try to understand everything. Even after 3.5 years of language study, which I had, I don't pretend to do that. But the philosophy is in the words too, just like what I'm showing you right here. There's philosophical vibrations in every character. Yes?
The different people, Shrew, the Confucian, the Chief, do you find that the people there in business are a combination, and so you're trying to draw out the good, or are they more discreet, that there are people that are simply lies, stealing, cheaters, and people that are just good, or there's a mismatch, you're just trying to pull out make them react in a way that's good?
I have found that it took a long time to find a good-hearted man. And when I found him, I hold tight to him. But on the opposite side, when they're looking out at all the different Chinese they do business with, and they find so few good-hearted men, they hold on to you really tight if you are honorable. So with that thought, you're dealing mostly with shrewd people. And in that shrewdness, you know, there's like 5-element management style, which is I have this idea of looking at China from a 5-element point of view. You want to be earth, you want to be the mountain when it comes to pricing and your profitability. You don't want to budge, you don't want to give in, you want to hold your ground. And so with shrewd people, you got to be shrewd. Yes.
What's been like in your time, you know, doing business in China? What's been like your most memorable, funniest experience you've had?
Well, I did for the class, for my Asian business class, I was on a secret filming of a movie for Dharma Kings, and for an enthronement of the 4th Golden Hat Buddha deep in the Gobi Desert. And that was a wild, almost 2 months adventure that started in Beijing and went Xining and deep. I met the Great White Sunlight Buddha. I was the translator. I was the one who was asking questions. I met the Talopa, the Naropa, and I saw this enthronement of this White Sunlight Buddha. It was kind of amazing, and it was a movie that we didn't have permission from the Chinese government. It was confiscated at the airport, but the experience is still in my mind. That was the best time I ever had. Well, thank you all. Oh, yes. Sorry.
Sorry. Thank you for giving me the chance to ask the final question. I am a new professor here at McCane, and then I noticed that you quoted a lot of texts from classical Chinese classics.
Yes.
I wonder if you could let us know a little bit how you think of classical Chinese in your whole Chinese education, because in some schools, in some colleges in America, classical Chinese is a required course, just as Chinese 101, or the second year. Everybody in Chinese program has to take classical Chinese. That is not the role of classical Chinese is not acknowledged in my school here at BMI. So I would like to hear a lot your thoughts about that. Sorry, it's a selfish question.
No, not at all. You know, when you take on Chinese, I met, for example, at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, I met a person who couldn't speak a word that could read classical Chinese. I found that just remarkable. That person's focus was only on interpretation of the characters. My focus was on speaking. I determined early on that I wouldn't be a great writer in Chinese, even this was before the computer, before the ability to type Chinese. But I focused only on speaking because I thought that was the best way to communicate, perhaps do business. But I take Chuang-Tzu and Lao-Tzu, and I took the Tao Te Ching, and I take it out, and I read it. And I use a device, the Pleco software, sometimes when I don't understand something, and I contemplate it. And what's interesting is that there's so many layers to one word. So if Lao Tzu uses a particular word, you can get the translation. But then you have all these historical references to that one word, which makes it like a huge chess game on 15, 20 different levels. I find that fascinating. But it's a lonely desert for me to do such a thing, because there's hardly anyone to relate to when you're doing it. But I think it's obviously a whole different language when you go back and you try to understand this. So I think there's a lot of power in that. My senior year at WNL, we literally read Lu Xun, so that's not classical. You know, it's only in the 1930s that was written, and that was tough enough just reading that. So I think from a non-Chinese, starting off from that, I think that the 4th or 5th year would be something more on the classical Chinese. So a freshman or a RAC started in Chinese and they hit it hard. I think maybe by the 4th year here at BMI, if they did maybe a time abroad, it would be good to do classical Chinese in the 4th year.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. You're another. I can't see too well. I'm sorry.
I have a quick question. When you're talking about the 3 different kinds of businessmen,
Yes.
in regards to like the lying, cheating, and stealing type,
Yes.
how do you like recognize that in a person, or like is there certain things you look for, or like, how long does it usually take you to find out that that's the kind of person that they are?
Well, one thing is learning manners, table manners. Just the way you hold Chinese chopsticks. I know this sounds really funny, but you know, when we learn Chinese chopsticks over here and they get a little out of line, we straighten them out on our plate, okay? But that's lower form of working with an individual. That's like not using the knife and the fork right. You straighten it out in your hand. So the more you learn about the Chinese, you're actually watching the way they share things. You're watching the way they treat you at a banquet. You're watching the way they honor you or don't honor you. You're watching the way they drink. And if they're just going to get you drunk, you're watching the whole aspect of their personality. And it's good to do that 2, 3, 4 times before you enter that business. Because the last thing you want to be doing, unless you're an alcoholic or something, is to you know, sign contracts with someone who wants to drink every time you see them. So, you know, the lie, cheating, steal, they'll actually, you'll start to see that. And then when it comes to the harmony in doing the 50-50 deal, you could see the person, the deception coming out. And I've seen that over and over and over again. Well, again, when you find a good-hearted man, you don't have to worry about it. All right, thank you.